915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to learn more.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Today we're going to be learning not only to love our city and love our neighbors, but we're going to learn a little bit about Texas, Spanish influence, and we're going to love our nation a little bit more, I hope. Today we have with us a very special guest. He's also, I'm going to just say this. He is our 915 Talk resident historian. I thought that would make us sound fancy to say that we have a resident historian. but we've had a lot of fun discussions. We've talked about Oñate. We've talked more recently about Pancho Villa. And we talked about the first Thanksgiving. The first Thanksgiving was not at Plymouth Rock. No, it was right here on Chicken Ranch Road in San Elizario, for those who are paying attention. So we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the Spanish influence on the Revolutionary War and maybe a little bit about what was going on in Texas at that time. So without further ado, let's give a very warm Borderland welcome to the 915 Talk resident historian extraordinaire, Sergeant Bernie Sargent. Bernie, welcome back to 915 Talk.
It's great to be there again.
You're sipping some hot tea, and it's that time of year, right?
Yeah, well, hot tea with a little honey in it. I'm battling this silly whatever the stuff that's going around right now, and it kind of knocked me off my feet last week for a couple of days. So, but merely a flesh wound.
I've heard some people say if you add some salt to the tea, that'll do the trick.
Yeah, we could reenact the bay there in Massachusetts. There was abundance of tea floating around there. That really alienated a lot of people. They were upset because they liked their tea.
Oh, yeah. I never thought of that. You have, of course, these zealous warriors for independence who go and dump all the tea in the harbor to make a point, but then there's no tea.
Yeah. Yeah, not everybody felt the same way as the Patriots did when it first started. But as this attempt to control those 13 colonies, they began to fall in line and support what was going on.
Right. So set up this whole enormous situation for us. You have the colonies here in the United States that are getting a little flustered by the situation with the old England, the old world. They don't like the taxation without representation. That's what we all learned in school. We learned about the Boston Tea Party. But then you have these other countries in Europe that have their own agenda. We, of course, know about France and Benjamin Franklin going over there and looking to get some funds. But one country in Europe I'd never thought about being involved at all was Spain.
Yeah, there was, when you're talking about the English, they needed money. They had been battling the world, it seemed like, at that time. And for them to tax the British citizens on the British islands the way they did the colonies, it would not have. Let's just say there would not have been much happiness in England. So the king said, "Well, these people can't say much. We'll just do it to them." And it just kept getting worse and worse. And again, they were trying to pay off some of these war debts and rebuild their machine because after the Spanish Armada was defeated in the 1500s, they were the kings of the world. They controlled everything. They talk about taking property, seizing property. They did. And for a period of time, you had the 7 years of war between the French and the Spanish. They ultimately settled and became allies because they saw what England was doing. In fact, England was taking a lot of their land away, which helped feed their war machines and their citizenry. And you had the French Indian Wars, which took place here. And at the end of the French Indian Wars, France lost a lot of land. They controlled what is now Canada. They controlled most of everything west of the colonies as we knew it. Right. And after the French Indian War, they had to surrender and give up a lot of that land. Well, in return, they managed to keep the land west of the Mississippi, because for all intent and purposes, England didn't know what the heck that was. Thought, okay, sure, we're good. We've got this. And so they controlled that portion. And the English, when they began to get their hands slapped a little bit, the French and the Spanish said, you know what, this might not be a bad idea. And as you alluded to, that dapper gentleman by the name of Benjamin Franklin over there swooing the people, he convinced the French to help, which they did reluctantly, but they did. They had a number of their lead soldiers come over and help train the American revolutionaries, which helped a whole lot. But we were still here as a colonist. We were low on everything in fighting a war against a world power like England. And we had a gentleman, he was actually the second of two boys born to a couple, one of the most affluent couples in Spain, by the name of Bernardo de Gálvez. And typically in the Spanish lineage, the number one son gets everything, and the number two son has to earn it. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, as the ball rolled, Gálvez's older brother passed away when I think it was 8 or 9, when Gálvez was 8 or 9 years old. And that made life a little bit easier for him, because he knew that if he kept his nose to the grindstone, he would get everything from his parents, which was a lot. He went to the finest military schools. He actually was in the Spanish military at the age of 16. Was very much a hero over in Spain in some of the battles they fought. A couple that they lost, but still he showed valiance, so he kept getting promoted. And he's a pretty smart guy. He kind of knew what was happening, and he kept his eyes open and looked for opportunity. He ultimately ended up as governor of the land from Florida over to what is now Texas and a lot of what is now Mexico. And England took Florida away from Spain, which, again, that angered Spain just a little bit more. Here they lost all these ships in the Armada. They lose in the French Indian War. They lose, they're losing all this land everywhere. And so he said, well, you know what? I think I can help. So even though Spain didn't declare war right away on England during the Revolution, there was a thing called I'm trying to remember the name of it. Oh, it was the Gradecki Family Trade Company. Okay. I have no idea where that came from, but I will look it up. But the Gradecki family were international trade organization. And so through them, rather than declare war on England, they supplied the colonies 215 bronze cannons, 30,000 muskets and bayonets, 51,000 musket balls, 300,000 pounds of powder, 12,900 grenades, 30,000 uniforms, and 4,000 tents, much needed by the revolutionaries. And this is before the war was declared. Well, in, I believe it was 1778, the Treaty of Alliance was signed between the colonies and Spain, and that gave Gálvez the opportunity to do what he did best, and that was commandeer land. And he was really good at it. And what he decided to do is control the Gulf. And knowing that the English needed the Gulf to get their supplies inland, he took advantage of it. He was hiring pirates. He was hiring anybody he could to capture English shipping before it got to the mainland, and did a pretty good job of it. And then he also organized, along with the Spanish settlers throughout Tejas and some of Mexico, he organized the opportunity to move cattle from their ranges to feed the colonists. So he's helping to feed the colonies also. It became a very important piece of the revolution, with which I think, had it not been with his help and Lafayette and a handful of others, we may still be speaking with a very strong accent.
Yeah, I think it's hopeful just to be reminded that, uh, well, I'll put it this way, that Massachusetts isn't the center of the universe. Uh,
Don't tell them now.
yeah, but it's just how our history books read, and we've talked about this in past conversations. How well Eurocentric, and then our history books are. But to be reminded that there's all these other things happening. It's not like the rest of the world just stopped functioning during the Revolutionary War. There are plenty of other countries that were full of ambitious men who were out conquering or doing whatever they they were doing. You're talking about trade, you're talking about weapons, you're talking about uh, well, it's massive geography. And part of when I look at this, I think, how much did Spain, France, and England really understand of this geography? I mean, the, it was just they knew a little bit of the coastline, and then they said, that's ours. Everything past this point is ours.
Sure, that's true. And they figured if they controlled that coastline, they controlled anything inland from it, whether it was valuable or not. And it's sort of like when we bought the land from Mexico after the U.S.-Mexican War. Who knew there was going to be so much gold and so much silver in Colorado and California?
Sure.
They just didn't know. And but point being that Massachusetts seemed to be the linchpin, or I should say, the driving nail in the revolution. But there was a lot going on everywhere. I mean, you can look at some of the things taking place in the Carolinas. There was a lot of battles that took place there that, had they not gone the way they did, our accent would be different. We might be still paying the Stamp Act tax, as opposed to our USPS and Postal Service.
Right, for sure.
Cheers.
For sure. Yeah. Okay, so we have all these players as we're kind of setting the stage. We have France, Benjamin Franklin. You mentioned Lafayette. Quite a colorful young man. Somehow I was having a conversation some months ago of just how young he actually was, coming and training U.S. troops. And of course, you have the King in England, and we're just picturing all these men in white wigs, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and so forth. But then you have Gálvez and Florida coming all the way through to Texas and then going into Mexico. And of course, there's a lot of tension down in the Gulf, which at the time, was it the Gulf of Mexico?
Yes, it was. Yeah, and to some it still is. But I'm not here to talk to that point. It's kind of an interesting conversation to have. But anyway, it was referred to as the Gulf of Mexico.
Sure. Okay, so there are all these kingdoms, really, that are have their fingers in the pie, so to speak. Tension is building, and what I understand is Spain brought 30,000 muskets, 250. I might get the numbers off a little bit. 250,000 pounds of gunpowder, all these brass cannons, and basically are supplying the colonies. And really, what it sounds like is it's a proxy war.
Oh yeah, it continues to this day.
Sure.
Yeah, if you look at what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, I mean, it's pretty much Russia, and Iran. It's proxy. I don't want to get my hands.
Yeah, exactly. Or you think of even Vietnam, which is a war between really the United States and the Soviet Union, and but at the time, the United States was kind of that Vietnam or Ukraine or Korea or whatever the case may be, because it wasn't the superpower, and you have these superpowers that are fighting among themselves over the American colonies, really indirectly.
Well, even in Philadelphia, when they were trying to work out this Declaration of Independence, there was open discussion as to, do we really want to do this, or do we want to try to negotiate with England? And by that time, the English had actually taken up refuge in homes. They kicked people out of their homes and took them over to put their soldiers in there. So it was getting pretty ugly. And as days went by, as time went by, more and more people in New England were saying, you know what? There's no negotiating with these people.
Right. Yeah. Okay. If you're just joining us, we're with our resident 915 Talk historian, the extraordinary Sergeant Bernie Sargent, who, against all odds, has overcome the common cold and is sipping some hot tea. And I think that's more than a cold. But I always appreciate his time and his conversation, his insight as we learn to love really just our city, our state, our nation, and really understand where we came from. I believe that is important for us to understand the context of where we're at really in history. We do need to take a break. Before we go into the break, this is your daily reminder that 915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. The website is desertvoice.media if you want to listen to this or any previous 915 Talk conversation. If you find history to be interesting, you can go into desertvoice.media, for example. Click on that 915 Talk link, scroll through, you'll see quite a few conversations there with past conversations with Bernie Sargent and so many other really interesting, colorful, energetic neighbors here in the borderland who really care about our community. We're going to go into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Greetings, KELP listeners. This is Terry Gray, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Sun City, and speaker on the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on this station. Calvary Chapel, Sun City is located at 960 West Borderland Road on the west side of El Paso. We hold services on Wednesday evenings at 7 and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 11. If you are without a church home, we would love to have you join us for worship and Bible study. You can find out more information about us on the web at www.ccsuncity.org.
915 Talk is listener supported and is a production of Desert Voice Media. That's right. It's people just like you who make this program possible. Together with Desert Voice, you can learn how to better serve our neighbors and pray for our community. To become a Desert Voice Media partner, you can visit desertvoice.media. That's right. That's the website, desertvoice.media. Take a look and join us today in reaching our borderland for Christ.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
And we're back. We're with 915 Talk resident historian extraordinaire, Bernie Sargent. According to AI, he is the leading. He's shaking his head right now. I enjoy this because it's on the radio. Most people don't see him who are not watching us on YouTube. But according to AI, he is the most prominent West Texas historian that. I'm just thinking of how I can build this up to really make him grit his teeth. But he truly is someone who loves the El Paso community, who has spent countless hours volunteering, who really does care about who we are here in West Texas and El Paso. So always enjoy these conversations. So we've been talking, Bernie, about the Revolutionary War, the Spanish influence. We've talked about France, Spain, this fellow Gálvez, who was hiring pirates of the Caribbean. I guess he had Johnny Depp there, I don't know, to be a thorn in the side of the British crown. And that was really aiding the revolutionaries in the American colonies. Let's talk El Paso at that point in time, Santa Fe, that point in history. What was happening here?
Oh, the 1700s. Well, you had the missions set up. Sure. You had the San Elizario, Chicken Ranch Road. You had that. They were blossoming and they were growing. Mm-hmm. The whole area was growing. It was El Paso. Fortunately, its geographic location really provides opportunity for tourism, even back in the 1700s, travel, trade. You had the natives trading with the Mexicans and the quasi-Spanish. You had the friars converting the residents to Catholicism. The revolt of 1770 had taken place up north, so people were working their way back down to the border. You had the river that ran almost 100% of the time. There was a plentiful water, and you didn't have the snow that you do up north, so it was a good place to travel through to get from one place to another. So there's a lot of exploration going on. And as people became more accustomed to horses, which were relatively new to that part of the world, that became a means of transportation. And as the wheel developed, I'm not going to go back to the stone wheels, but as the wheels developed and they became to automate, so to speak, the covered wagons or the old buggies to make it more comfortable to travel, that actually helped create more tourism and travel also. Tourism is kind of a loose word to use back in those days. These people were traveling because of need, out of necessity or opportunity. They weren't traveling, hey, let's stop here. There's a nice looking adobe structure. Yeah. Now we're looking at a nice looking adobe structure going, that's pretty neat. But back then they're going, yeah, okay, let's move on. So yeah, it was a whole different world, but there was a lot of compared to other areas of the Southwest, there was a lot going on in the El Paso area.
Right. And we talked about this in a previous conversation, but you just alluded to it that really there was a revolution of sorts up north from El Paso, and you said 1770. I'm going to get this wrong, but you please correct me. As far as I remember, it was the only situation in which the native peoples revolted successfully, really, in the history of the United States, and that was up in Santa Fe.
There were occasions where the natives did defeat the white man, so to speak.
Yeah.
That, like for Custer, for instance, is an example.
Sure.
So there are some examples, but that was probably the first of note west of the Mississippi. At least west of the Mississippi, yeah. Yeah,
and that's an important pivotal point in history for El Paso, because really the Spanish colonists were forced out of Santa Fe and Taos, and what I remember is that's why El Paso really began to grow, is because they were forced back south to El Paso. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you look at the growth there, when the missions and the Presidios started, the revolt, I believe it was 1740. I think I said 1740, chased everybody on south, or not everybody, but those that were beginning to follow Catholicism, and the friars and the priests. That's when they beat feet down south to where it was safer, and cross over into what is now Juarez. And from there, they established the missions and the Presidio, and growth on the north side of the river began to take effect.
Right. And I guess kind of what I'm getting at here is I'm just drawing a parallel that there's the Revolutionary War that most of us learned about in elementary school. But there was sort of a mini revolution up in Santa Fe and Taos. But I would think that most of those folks were quite unconcerned with what was happening on the Battle of Bunker Hill, for example.
They probably didn't even know what Bunker Hill was.
Exactly.
I mean, to them, there was a whole different world, a whole different time span. To where we were, or I should say El Pasoans of that time were, they didn't have the communications, they didn't have newspapers, they didn't have anything that comes close to the communications we have now. So it was just a whole different world. They didn't care. I mean, it's not going to impact them. Why should they care?
Yeah. Of course. And El Paso is kind of, the way you described it, it sounds like a golden age. The river was always running. It was kind of a destination. It's always been a crossroads, but particularly then. And somehow this came up in a conversation, possibly with you and somewhere else, when I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago. El Paso at that time was it that time when it was a wine producer for the world?
A what producer?
Wine.
Oh, yeah. They were not for the world. Well, not so much for the world, but maybe for the Western Hemisphere, maybe mainly from Paso del Norte south into Mexico, because the King of Spain said, you people aren't buying our wine to distribute amongst the church goers there in the new España. So therefore, I'm not allowing you to make your own wine anymore. You've got to buy my wine and use it. And that's when I use the analogy that the priests and the friars began selling their wine under the altar.
Oh, wow. So that was kind of El Paso's version of a Boston Tea Party.
There you go. yeah, exactly. And that's where the wine. That's how the wine started. The area is the climate is conducive, and it's so much like parts of Spain, France, and Italy that the folks that were moving into that area were bringing grape cuts with them or grape stalks with them and planting them. And plus, at the altitude that El Paso is in, that particular wine grape was not susceptible to some of the diseases that grapes, vineyards growing in lower altitudes were. And you would wipe out a whole grape vineyard in, let's say, East Texas, which it wasn't known for wine at the time, but there was some attempt. But it would wipe out a whole grape vineyard with just this one disease. But it would not spawn, it would not grow in the altitudes 3,000 feet and above, like El Paso is.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's super interesting, just for us to be reminded of how much our community, our region can change, and I think anyone who drives around New Mexico will see signs for New Mexico wine. But it's nothing like it was back then, and really the whole landscape has shifted. But what you're saying is it was kind of did I understand you right? It was kind of a priestly rebellion against the Spanish crown, kind of getting focused on this whole wine issue?
Yeah. They wanted to control it. They wanted all the wine to come from Spain.
Oh, wow. Okay. And they didn't like that El Paso was having this little revolution of creating its own wine industry.
Yeah, it really did. Another thing, too, that they were having problems with, not only the disease, they also had problems in the containers that they were shipping the wine in. Because wine will react very negatively to some containers. And, I think one is copper. You put it in copper, it just goes bad quickly. But you're King of Spain. You don't care. You got your fresh wine in your back, in the storage. Yeah. You can drink it any time. But these people over in the New World, they're going to drink what we send them. So there was a lot of things. In fact, I believe that they're in either La Viña or one of the other vineyards up there. They still grow from the original stalks. They've nurtured them, and they're able to grow that same wine. I can't remember for sure which one it was. But they advertise it that is some of the original wine. Not aged from 1700s or whatever, but
sure,
it's the stalks. They cut the stalks, save them, and then plant them again the next year. So they've been doing that for generations.
Right. So what I'm looking at is just this massive tectonic shift that's happening around the world at that time. England has overextended itself in a major way. That the empire never sets, the sun never sets on the empire, I should say, and it can't afford it. And even today, with modern technology, I don't know how you would control an empire of that size. And you have France, who is claiming Canada. Spain is claiming Mexico. And then kind of this common thread is this fellow Gálvez, who his area or territory of responsibility extends from Florida going all the way across Texas and into Mexico.
Yeah, he was in 1777. He was appointed governor of Louisiana, and he had aspirations of grandeur because Spain had got spanked pretty bad, and he thought, look for opportunity. And when it arose, he managed to move his soldiers east into Florida and retook Florida, and so he controlled the whole coastline, which was great for the colonies.
Okay. All right. So what happened next? Because Spain is supplying the colonies, France is providing some support, as you said, reluctantly, and I'm going to point out that I have a very weak understanding of what happened with Florida and Louisiana, and then Texas at that time. Did they all kind of separately fall under the, I'll say, the auspices of the United States, or was it in one fell swoop, so to speak?
No, Texas or Tejas, Coahuila, stayed under Spain until the 1800s, when the Mexicans beat Spain and took that property over, and it became part of Mexico. So that went that way. Louisiana stayed French. Louisiana Purchase took place a few years after the war was over, and that's when the United States spent a lot of money, at the time for the United States it was, and bought that property all the way up to the Mississippi River. And then gradually, as land was purchased, moving west, the United States took over more and more property. Post war between Texas and Mexico, Mexico and the United States fought. That's when we had the Gadsden Purchase, and we bought the land that is now California, New Mexico, Arizona, and the rest of Texas. So gradually we bought off pieces of the land until it became the United States. And if you watched the news from Canada now, there's concern that there's 2 provinces that might become states in Canada. So I thought, well, this is interesting.
Right. Yeah. So Louisiana transferred from Spain back to France in the early 1800s. I just looked.
After the revolution was over, Spain kept control of of Louisiana. But then the United States bought that property from Spain. Spain needed money too. And so we bought the land from them. So that's how it ended up. The war ended in 1783. And
right.
And I wrote a story about Gálvez. And in 1783, he was 37 years old, and he was kind of handed the keys to the Spanish Empire in the Americas and said, go be excellent some more, as I put it. And so from 1784 to 85, I'll just read this to you. King Carlos III looked at Gálvez's resume and said, this man's just solo carried the Gulf Coast. Give him all the titles. So he was captain general in Louisiana. He was he was a governor. So he had all these titles on paper in 1784, and also controlled West Florida. So in 1885, he was named Viceroy of New Spain, which is basically CEO of Mexico and Central America and California, everything that Spain owned west of Louisiana. He was the youngest viceroy in Spanish history.
Wow.
So, yeah, he was. I call him a rock star, because he kind of was at that time. And so, as I put it here, what he actually did as a viceroy from 1785 to 1786, about 18 months, the tragedy struck. He cleaned up corruption in the Treasury. The auditors got very nervous because there was a lot of thievery going on. He improved silver mining output because Spain was addicted to Mexican silver the way we're addicted to coffee. He built roads, hospitals, and schools like he was playing Civilization 6 on speedrun mode. He fortified the absolute heck out of the northern frontier, sent expeditions to beef up Texas and New Mexico defenses because he knew the Comanche and Apaches didn't care that the war was over. He strengthened San Antonio, Nacogdoches, and even pushed new settlements in what's now East Texas. He basically drew a giant "No Brits Allowed" line across the continent.
Wow. Yeah. And I look at that and I think he had limited resources. It's not like he had 50,000 troops, I would assume.
No, he didn't. He had a very small army.
Sure.
Compared to the English, he was like 2,000 or 3,000. Occasionally, he'd pick up a lot of volunteers along the way, especially the Native Americans. They were getting a little bit tired of the redcoats. But he didn't have near the strength that the English did. His strength was surprise. He didn't do what the British thought he should do as a proper gentleman warfighter. Let's lock arms and gunfire. Yes.
Well, as you say, he was hiring pirates, so it sounds like he was a deal broker as much as a governor.
Yeah, yeah. It was an interesting life that he led. In 1786, he was in Mexico City doing his examination, as he would do on a periodic basis. And there was an epidemic going around. So he unfortunately caught the epidemic. I think it was typhoid. November 30th of 1786, he died at the age of 40.
Wow. Okay, so he lived fast and hard and ambitiously and died quite young, but he left his mark on this part of the world for sure.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, unfortunately, rulers from some countries, they become accustomed to control. And he had the control, but he also had the reputation of treating people like humans. And when he died, literally thousands of people in Mexico City lined the streets, and he had full military honors buried with a tomb that's still visible today. I mean, he was very well liked by the people, but things changed after him, from what I understand. I've not done any research on post Gálvez in Mexico, but it doesn't sound like it went too well.
Sure. Okay. All right. If you're just joining us with Bernie Sargent, I think it's, some people say we live in a simulation, Bernie. But when I find out that your rank in the military was sergeant and your last name Sargent, I don't know. I'm starting to believe that
So it was a catch 22 or whatever it was. What was the name of the movie?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so always appreciate these conversations. We do need to take a break. Before we go into the break, KELP Radio does want to thank all of our impact partners. These are local businesses, nonprofits, educational institutions that have joined us in our journey to serve our borderland community through radio ministry. And today I would like to give a shout out to Rio Grande Auctions. That's a local online auction, as I've stated a few times on air, our family secret. That's where we buy a lot of our Christmas presents, but they have things like tools, clothes, furniture, and it's all done in an auction format. And then you can pick up, if you win your auction, what do you call it in an auction? Your auction bid, you can go and pick up whatever you won there at their warehouse over on Wyoming. But it's really good people over there that run that. I encourage you to go to riograndeauctions.com, check it out, see if there's anything that they're offering right now that would be a great deal for you. And you can view all of our impact partners by going to kelpradio.com and just scrolling down to that impact partner section. If you are a local business owner, or maybe you're managing a business and you're interested in learning more of what it means to become a KELP Radio Impact Partner, you can just use that contact link there at KELP Radio. Get in touch with us. We'll walk you through what needs to happen to join us in what we're doing here, and we would love to promote what you're doing to our audience. We're going to go into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
915 Talk is listener supported and is a production of Desert Voice Media. That's right. It's people just like you who make this program possible. Together with Desert Voice, you can learn how to better serve our neighbors and pray for our community. To become a Desert Voice Media partner, you can visit desertvoice.media. That's right. That's the website, desertvoice.media. Take a look and join us today in reaching our borderland for Christ.
Greetings, KELP listeners. My name is Terry Gray, and I have the joy and privilege of serving as the pastor of Calvary Chapel, Sun City, located on the west side of El Paso. I also have the joy of connecting with the radio audience in the borderland through the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on this station. On Summons, we study the Bible book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, precept by precept. Please join us each weekday at 5 p.m. for Summons right here on KELP.
We're back. You're listening listening to 915 Talk.
And we're back. Today we're talking with our resident 915 Talk historian, Bernie Sargent. Always enjoy these conversations, learning where the context of where we're at today comes from these stories from really hundreds of years ago, I believe. And we're talking about how the Battle of Bunker Hill is important, the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, the Declaration of Independence. We love all those things. We've learned about them in school, but there was a lot that was going on in the world at that time with other countries, and it's important for us to learn about that as well, and particularly how it affects us here in El Paso and in Texas. And Bernie, you were talking about Gálvez. Essentially, again, his territory ran from Florida through, I guess it would be Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and he was very influential in San Antonio. Is that correct?
Ultimately, yes. Initially, no. They wanted him to really pay attention to the coast from Louisiana over to Florida. Also, some of the islands in the Caribbean. So he was overseeing some of that also. But the rest of it, that didn't take place till 1783 when the war was over. They gave him all these promotions and these long names and titles. And that's when he had everything all the way down to Mexico City and Central America.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's interesting for me to think about San Antonio at that time because, again, getting back to El Paso, my impression is San Antonio was focused on Mexico City as being the ultimate authority, and then essentially Spain was behind that. And El Paso was the same way, looking south. And were San Antonio and El Paso really looking at each other at that time? Or were they just looking towards their leadership to the south?
They were looking just south.
Yeah,
El Paso really didn't have a whole lot of communications, if any, with San Antonio at the time. San Antonio's direct control came out of Ojinaga. They had a governor over there.
Okay.
And then he got his marching orders from Mexico City.
Right.
And as I alluded to in the previous session, he, or should say leaders, sometimes they get control and they go out of control. And that's one of the problems that the Texians, the settlers in Texas had with Mexico was not necessarily Mexico City, but it was Ojinaga's governor who was taking liberties. Now, Santa Anna didn't help things much. Yeah, he actually magnified them, but that's a whole other story.
Okay. All right. So what you're saying is in the 1780s, there was no I-10.
No. No.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting just because I think for a lot of, a lot of young people today, we'll just put it, we've talked a lot about the brain drain in El Paso and the need for El Paso to, really become attractive to its young people so that they'll stay invested in the community. But one of the places a lot of young people look to when they graduate from high school or college is, of course, UT Austin is one of the places, but then eventually finding work in places like San Antonio. And so today, San Antonio and El Paso really have a connection. A lot of people know each other in both cities, but at that time, they weren't really connecting with each other. It was, we're looking back towards the Spanish crown via Mexico City.
Yeah, San Antonio was really a growing community also at the time. And, the mission there was very, very big, and the whole area was very busy. And it was kind of the hub of this part of the world, inland from the Gulf. Very, very busy. And I know that one of the first things that started the revolution was the fact that the Texians had actually chased General Cos out of San Antonio and took over the mission. And then Santa Anna was not a happy camper when that took place. And Cos, that's, again, we're getting into Texas Revolution history. But Cos was a little more understanding and respectful for human life than his boss. Mm-hmm. Now, even though they were related, I believe he was brother-in-law of Santa Anna. He was a different person than Santa Anna was. It was unfortunate for a number of reasons, because if you look at what took place with Goliad, when the Mexican army killed so many surrendered military from Texas, Cos was in charge. He was against it, but he told Santa Anna he did not want to put them up against a firing squad, but they did anyway. And he was, unfortunately, not there at the time, so the direct order that went to him fell in the next person's lap, and he took advantage of it and killed almost 400 Texians.
Wow. There's all this colorful history. I learned today for the first time about this fellow Gálvez. I'd never heard of him before. I have to ask you, is he the person that we named Galveston after?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm very proud of myself for thinking of that.
And you win, yes.
But Galveston, I guess, would be kind of a key, reminder of Gálvez, because he controlled that whole area from, as you said, the coastline, from Florida down into Mexico. Galveston is right there on the coast, and as our listeners maybe somehow travel to Galveston or are reminded of it, they can be reminded of this ambitious young man, this deal broker, who through just a very small I don't know group of troops managed to control a massive portion of land. But when I look at all this, Bernie, we're talking France, the U.S. colonies, Spain, of course, Mexico, all of these things. You made a comment that reminds me of a famous U.S. presidential race. There was one phrase. It said, "It's the economy." And then that phrase ends with the word "stupid," but really, what happened, it feels like, is you have these empires: the French Empire, the British Empire, the Spanish Empire, and they were all working hard to become powerful, but then they crumbled because they couldn't figure out the economic part. And the U.S. colonies, of all people, because they were new, young, they didn't have that legacy economy, they were the ones who ended up just buying the land in the end.
Pretty much did do that, yeah. In America, some people are very critical of our growth, but for the most part, that's what they did. They negotiated and came up with agreements with the people that controlled it, with the exception of some of the Native Americans, which I understand that was not popular and still isn't to this day with some people, how that land became part of the United States. Now, you get into a situation where you have France controlling a big chunk, you have Spain controlling a big chunk in England. The United States beats England. The United States buys land from France, buys land from Spain. Unfortunately, the Native Americans at that time felt that they still own the land, and to this day, they do. Some do, but so that it flew in the face of good negotiation. But you don't know, just don't know. It was an interesting time of life. It still is to this day. But the way things were going, it's just fascinating how this all fell into place.
Right. Yeah. What a major shift in world history, and it is a little amusing what we talked about, how through all of this, the people in El Paso were probably blissfully unaware of all the fighting, of all these other issues that happen. And I guess to this day, some folks feel like we're a little bit of an island in the desert.
Yeah, it's true. And then some people are really happy that way. I didn't know much about Gálvez either until I talked to somebody about it, because we're very much involved with the celebration of our 250th birthday in 2026. And I'd asked the question. I said, "What was Spain? What was Texas? How was Texas involved in the revolution?" And that's when I came across Gálvez's name. I said, "Well, let me look into it." I knew the name. I didn't know as much history as I do now. I didn't realize that back in 2002 on PBS there was a series of cartoons about the revolution, one of which included Gálvez as one of the subjects. And I found that pretty interesting. They really took a lot of poetic license with it, but it's very interesting listening to it. Schwarzkopf was one of the characters. It was kind of funny listening to his voice going. He was a good soldier, but he was one of the characters in there. Billy Crystal was a character in this montage of cartoons about the revolution. It went through 2002, 2003, and they still aired until 2004. And I just happened to hear about it and went online and went, "Oh, that's interesting." So it's kind of, yeah. And then I found out also that in 2014, we initiated the building of another battleship. Well, it's not a battleship; it's called a frigate, by the name of USS Gálvez, which will be launched, I believe, in 2026, 2027.
Yeah,
So
I
this building, and he's also one of 8 individuals given official citizenship, honorary citizenship by the President of the United States. He's one of 8.
oh wow.
Yeah.
I assumed that this is after his death.
Yeah, I hope so. It was definitely. Well, there was no United States when he died, so.
Right,
But
exactly. Yeah. So, how interesting! I love these conversations, Bernie, because as we've said so many times in these conversations, that there's a whole other history. The history we learned in school is super valuable. Good to know those things, but there are so many other things that happen at those times, and different events that probably affect us more in West Texas today than what we learned in our textbooks back in the 3rd and 4th grade. So good for us to brush up on those things now, learn about them for the first time. Super fun for the first time to learn about Gálvez, the man who we named Galveston after and gave an honorary citizenship to later on in life, and really served a pivotal role in our nation's history. So appreciate this so much, Bernie.
Oh, my pleasure, my honor. I got one more little anecdote, if I can share it with you.
Hear it. Absolutely.
Okay. The way I wrote it is, at the time he accidentally adopted an entire Irish regiment at Mobile in 1780. A bunch of Irish Catholic soldiers in British service see Gálvez's army coming. Remembering they hate the English more than they hate dying, and just to switch sides mid-battle, Gálvez welcomes them with open arms, gives them Spanish uniforms, and immediately puts them in the front line. The Irish reportedly loved it because the Spanish gave them better rum.
Oh, wow. Well, Gálvez was quite the deal broker, and the Irish, of which I am one, can be quite the characters. So, and they were all far from their home country and caught in the middle of these cataclysmic events, and super fun to hear about the human side of all this.
Oh yeah, well, the Irish hated the English forever, and over in the United States, even in the early days, it said Irish need not apply. So they were singled out also. But I thought that was cute. There were so many anecdotal pieces of information that I found out about him that was just so much fun trying to put it in a kind of a humorous, educational slant.
Right.
But I thought the Irish was pretty funny.
That's great, Bernie. Always love and appreciate these conversations. Let's learn to love our city, love our neighbors. Let's learn to love the history of the region that we call home, and give God all the glory. This has been 915 Talk.
You have been listening to 915 Talk, a production of Desert Voice Media. To listen to this or any previous edition of 915 Talk, just visit desertvoice.media and click on the 915 Talk link. Let's continue to learn to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory.